Hello everyone, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this edition of the Waec 2020 past question solutions. Last time we did question from number 1 to 10, and today we are going to look at question from number 11 to 20. I guess you're enjoying the first part of this video we did, which are solutions, real-time solutions of the last year past question 2020 Waec. If you are taking GCE this year, you're taking NECO, you're taking Waec SSC examination, this video is just right for you. We're going to give you step-by-step solutions of all the questions that will be found in your Waec 2020 examination. These are past questions that most likely can repeat itself. So if you are ready, now let's look at the very first question number 11. The implication x, y is equivalent to what? Now we are given several options in that question we are given. Now let's look at how we can draw the truth table for x and y. Now we are going to look at the truth table, and it's going to be a lengthy solution. Now let's look at how we can get the truth table. We'll take this as y, we'll take this as x, and we'll take this as y. We're going to look at this as x mapping y, and we are going to look at a solution of the negation of x, then we'll look at the negation of y, and then we are going to look at the negation of x mapping negation of y, and then we're going to compare it with the negation of y mapping the negation of what? X. Let's see the one that will be equivalent to this value. Now let's assume that this is true, this is true, this is false, and this is false. Let's assume that this is true, this is false, this is true, and this is false. Now we want to do something, and I want you to note this. This question is under logic, and when you are dealing with logic has various statements. We have negative statement, that's negation statement. We have conditional statement, biconditional. It all depends on the statement you are trying to do. Now under this we have, this is a question on conditional statement which involve implication, and we have biconditional statement which will involve equivalent. Now we are going to look at the negation of this, and then we'll compare it to these two values that are given us in our options. Now let's look at this. Now if you are dealing with conditional statements that involve implication, now note this. It can only be what? It can only be false if what? If x is what? If x is true and what? And y is what? False. Otherwise, it will be what? True. Now let's test that with that. When it is true and y is true, it will be true. The conditional implication will be true, statement will be true. Now when it is x is true and y is false, then it will be what? False. Remember the statement, only false if x is true and y is what? And y is false. Now if x is false and y is true, then it will be true. If x is false and y is false, then it will be what? True. Now let's look at the negation of the value of x. Negation means the statement is opposite, is negative to the other statement. So if x is true here, the negation will be false. If x is true here, the negation will be false. If x is false here, the negation will be true. And if x is false here, the negation will be true. If y is true here, the negation will be false. If y is false here, the negation will be true. If y is true here, the negation will be what? False. And if y is false here, the negation will be true. Now let's test it with this conditional implicational statement. Conditional statement which is implication. Now using this same conditional rule or laws. Now it is only false if x is, negation of x is true and negation of y is what? False. Otherwise it is true. So that means this will be what? True. This false and true will be what? Will be true. True and false will be what? Will be false, right? Because it's only false if x is true and y is what? False. Then true and true will be what? True. Now let's try it with this other one. False and false will be what? False and false will be true. False and true will be what? True. No, sorry, let's look at this. Remember, this other one, x comes first before what? Y, and this other one, y will come first before what? X. So y and f, the statement will still continue. If the first one is true, then the other one is false, then it will be what? False. So the first one is false and this other one is false, then it will be what? True. Now the first one is true and this other one is false, that means it will be what? False. Remember the statement. If this is false and this is true and this is false, then this will be what? False. Now let's look at the other statement. If this is false and this is true, it will be what? True. And if this is true and this is true, then it will be what? True. Now do you notice now that when we did the conditional statement, the implication of this, it gave us true, false, true, true. And when we did that of negation of x and negation of y, it gave us true, true, false, true, which is not equivalent to this. Now this other one gave us true, false, true, true, which is equivalent to this. So that means our value x mapping what? Y is what? Is equivalent to what? Negation of y mapping what? Negation of what? X. That's the correct answer. And if you check the option, you are going to see the option there. This option is also there, but it's not equivalent to what? To this. It's a lengthy solution, you know, but I want you to look at how we go about the solution on logic. This is a question on logic, and we are going to give you a full-blown video on this thing. I want you to look forward to it. Now let's look at the next question. Now the solution to question number 12 says the first term of a geometric progression GP is 3 and the fifth term is 48. Find the common ratio. This is one of those questions you see commonly in your exams. Now looking at this question, we are told that the first term A is equal to what? 3. We'll take this as our equation 1. Now the fifth term, which is T5, is equal to ARn minus 1, which is the general formula for the nth term of a geometric progression, is equal to what? AR raised to power 5 minus what? 1, which is equal to AR raised to power 4, and that is, they say, is equal to what? Is 40 what? 8. So we'll take this as our equation what? As our equation 2. Now we are asked to look for the common what? The common ratio. We have this as our equation 1, which is the first term, and then the fifth term, which is now equation 2. Now we have to divide equation 2 by equation 1. Now if we do that, we are going to arrive at AR raised to power 4 divided by what? A, and that will be equal to also 48 divided by what? 3. This will cut this, and we'll have our R raised to power 4 to equal to 48 divided by 3. 3 here will give us what? 3 here will give us 1, remainder 1. 3 in 18 will give us 6. So we'll have this to be equal to 16. Now for we to clear this, we have to raise this to a given power so that we can be able to clear the power. Now 2 raised to power 4 will be equal to what? 16, because we have 2 times 2 times what? 2 times 2. That will give us 16. So R raised to power 4 will be equal to what? 2 raised to power 4. With this root squares can, the powers can cut the power, so we'll have our r to be equal to what? 2. Now you see, when you are given any question on geometric progression, we all just have to use this principle, remembering the general formula for geometric progression. Now we have video, a full-blown video on this topic too, which you can go and check so as to know how to go about solutions like this subsequently. Let's look forward to solving question number 13. So when given a question like this, the first thing you need to do is to clear the fraction. And to clear the fraction, you come to see that we have one common base fraction, that is 3 times what? 5. That will be 15. So the first thing we'll do is to multiply both sides by what? By 15, which is common. Now if we multiply both sides by 15, we'll have our 15 multiplied by 1 over 3 into bracket 5 minus what? 3x less than what? 15 multiplied by what? 2 over what? 5 into bracket 3 minus what? 7 what? X. So this will cut this to give us 3, and this will cut this to give us what? 5. So here we'll have our what? 5 into bracket 5 minus what? 3x less than what? 6 into bracket 3 minus what? 7x. Why? Because 3 times 2 is what? Is 6. Now the next thing we will do now is to expand the fraction. This times this will give us 25 minus 15 what? X less than 6 times 3 will give us what? 18 minus 7 times 6 will give us 42 what? 42x. Now, having arrived at this, we'll see how we can make sure that this x value comes this way and this comes here. Since it's an inequality sign, we have to use instruction to reduce them. So the first thing we'll do is to what? Subtract what? Subtract 18 from what? From both sides. Now if we subtract 18 from both sides, what we'll have is what? 25 minus 15 what? X minus what? 18 is less than what? 18 minus what? 42x minus what? 18. So 18 will cut what? 18 here. Now 25 minus 18 here will give us what? 7, right? Good. So this will give us minus 15x plus what? 7 is less than what? Minus what? 42 what? 42x. Right? So the next thing we are going to look at now, is how to reduce 7 from this side. So if we want to reduce 7 from this side or take away this from this side, we'll have to add minus 42x to both sides. So we'll add what? Add minus what? 42x to what? To both what? To both sides. Now if we add minus 42x to both sides, we are going to have minus 15x plus what? 7 minus, we're going to plus what? Plus 42. We're going to add 42 to both sides plus 42x less than what? Minus what? 42x plus what? Plus 42x. Now the main reason why we are adding 42x to both sides, not minus 42x, is to make sure that we clear the 42 at this other side. So having done that, this side will give you what? 0. And this side will give us what? 15 minus 42 minus 15. 42 minus 15. This will give us 12. 12 minus 5 will give you 7, and this will remain 3. 3 minus 1 will give you 20 what? 27. So we are going to have plus 27. 27x plus what 7 is less than what 0, because what is remaining here is 0. Now we're going to give another instruction, and that instruction is going to take 7 away from the other side, so that we'll be left with what we need. Now we'll have our what 27x plus what 7 is less than what 0. So we will now have to subtract what? Subtract 7 from both sides. Now when we subtract 7 from both sides, we'll have 27x plus what 7 minus what 7 is less than what 0 minus what 7. So this will give us what 27 what x less than what minus what 7. So we'll divide both sides now by, I hope you're following. Now let's look at divide both sides by 27. We divide both sides by 27, we are going to have what 27x divided by what 27 less than what minus 7 divided by what 27. So 27 will cut 27. At the tail end we are going to have our x, we're going to have our x to be less than what minus 7 over what 27. Check the options, you're going to see this result. So that is exactly how you go about solving questions on inequality. You take them step by step to arrive at your final solution. Now let's look at sample question 14. Solving question number 14, we are asked to make m the subject of formula, the subject of the relation k square root of m minus y all over m plus 1. So if we are given this relation, all we need to do is to take it step by step so as to make m the subject of formula. Now the first thing we'll do here is to square root both sides, is to square both sides so as to what? Remove the square root. So the first thing we'll do is to what? Square what? Both sides. So if we square both sides, we are going to have k squared to be equal to what? Square root of what? n minus 1 all over what? n plus what? 1. All what? All squared. So this will cut this, and we'll have our k squared to be equal to n minus y all over what? m plus 1. Hooray! The square root is gone. Now the next thing we need to do is to what? Is to cross multiply. So we'll have our m minus y to be equal to what? K squared multiplied by m plus what? Plus 1. Now simplifying further, we'll have our m minus y to be equal to what? K squared m plus what? K what? Square. Remember, we want to make m the subject of what? Formula. So we'll collect terms related to what? M. So let's collect like terms. We'll have our m, this will come over here to give us minus k what? Square m equal to what? K square. This will go over here, this will go over here, will give us what? Plus what? Plus y. Or this will give us what? Y plus what? K what? K square. So having gotten this now, all we need to do is to collect like terms here. This will be what? M equal into bracket 1 minus what? K what? Square, because m is common into the 2, within the 2. This will give us y plus what? K what? Square. Having arrived at that, the next thing we'll now do is to do what? Is to simplify this. We now have our m, we'll now have our m, we'll now have our m into bracket what? 1 minus k what? Square equal to what? Y plus what? K what? K square. So we need to divide both sides by 1 minus what? K square, so as to make m the subject of formula. So if we divide this, m into bracket 1 minus k square divided by what? 1 minus k square equal to what? Y plus what? K square all over what? 1 minus what? K what? K square. This will cut this, and we'll finally have our n to be equal to what? Y plus what? K square all over what? 1 minus what? K what? Square. So that is the solution to this sample question. Sample question number 14. M is equal to y plus k square all over 1 minus what? K square. Now let's look at question number 15. We are asked to find a quadratic equation whose roots are 1 over 2 and minus 1 over 3. Now, given this quadratic equation, we are meant to know that from quadratic equation that x is equal to 1 over 2 and what? Our second x is equal to what? Minus 1 over 3. Now, if we look at this now, if we look at this value of x, we'll come to see now that this can be equal to x now can be equal to minus 1 over 2, and what? Our x here can plus 1 over 2, 1 over 3 will be equal to what? 0, because it is from this equation that we arrived at this. Because when we say our x minus half is equal to 0, then x will be equal to 1 over 2, and when we say our x plus 1 over 3 is equal to 0, then x will be equal to minus 1 over 3. Now the reason why we did this is to get the equation through which we got these roots. Now let's bring the equation together. This will now give us what? Our x minus 1 over 2 multiplied by what? X plus what? 1 over 3. With this now equating to 0, we can get the quadratic equation that produced these two roots. I hope you get it. Now let's multiply. This times this will give us x squared. This times this will give us plus what? X over what? 3. Now this times this will give us minus what? X over 2 plus, it's not going to be a plus, minus times minus plus will give us minus. This times this will give us what? 1 over what? 6. Everything will be equal to what? 0. Now let's look at the LCM of these two at the middle to remove the fraction. If we do the LCM, this is give us 6. This and this, 6 divided by 3 will give us what? 2x, right? Minus this divided by this will give us what? 3x. Now this will be minus what? 1 over 6, and this will be x squared plus what? Everything will be equal to what? 0. Now having 6 to be common in everything, we need to multiply through by what? Multiply through by 6. So before we do that, let's subtract these two. So this will give us what? X squared plus what? This minus this will now give us minus what? Minus x over 6 minus what? 1 over 6 equal to what? 0. Now having 6 to be in every aspect, we need to remove that 6. And to remove that 6, we'll multiply through by what? We'll multiply through by what? By 6. Now let's multiply through the equation by 6. If we multiply through the equation by 6, we'll have 6 times what? X squared minus x over 6 times what? Times 6 minus what? 1 over 6 times what? 6. Everything will be equal to 0 times what? 6. So this will give us 6 what? X squared. 6 will cut 6 to give us minus what? X minus 6 will cut this to give us 1, and everything will be equal to what? 0. So the equation that produces that root 1 over 2 and minus 1 over 3 is what? 6x minus x minus 1, which is equal to what? 0. So whenever you are given any root of any equation, or first thing you do is to return back to the equation that produced that root. If x is equal to minus 1, then the equation will be x plus what? 1 equal to what? 0. If x is equal to 1, then the equation will be x plus what? X minus what? X minus 1 equal to what? 0. And then you multiply to get back the what? The equation. You see how easy it is. Now let's look at the next sample question. Now this question number 16, it says given that x is directly proportional to y and inversely proportional to z, x is 15 when y is 10 and z is equal to 4. Find the equation connecting x, y and z. So when you are given this kind of question, it's a question of variation that combines direct variation with what? Inverse variation. And we are told that x is what? Directly proportional to y and inversely proportional to what? To z. Now we'll look at a constant to replace this proportionality sign, and the constant is always constant what? K, which is ky all over what? Z. Now having given this, we were told that x is equal to what? 15. We are told that y is equal to 10, and we are told that z is equal to what? 4. So we need to look at the equation that connects x, y and z. So inputting this into this general value equation we've isolated, that will give us what? 15 equal to what? K times what? Times 10 divided by what? By 4. When we cross multiply, we'll have our k times 10 to be equal to what? 15 times what? 4. 15 times 4 is going to give us 60. So our k times what? 10 is equal to what? 60. So from here, we can now see that our k is equal to what? 60 divided by what? 10. And k will be equal to what? 6. So having our k to be equal to 6, we want to look at the equation that is connecting x, y and what? X, y and z. Now, given this equation, we'll have our x to be equal to what? K what? Y over what? Z. Fixing the value for k, we can now have that our k is equal to what? 6y over what? Z. This is the equation connecting x, y and what? And z. You see how easy it is to get it. So when solving question of variation, this is exactly what you are required, and this is exactly what you are asked to do. So from this, we can find the value of z when x and y is what is given. So let's look at the next question without wasting much time. Question number 17. Now, question number 17 says two buses start from the same station at 9 a.m. and travel in opposite direction along the same straight road. The first bus traveled at the speed of 72 km per hour and the second at 48 km per hour. At what time will they be 240 km apart? Now you see this question has to do with a question that involves what? Diagram. And once you can draw it, then you can do what? You can solve it. Now let's start with the drawing. Now this is the bus station. We have bus A and we have bus what? And we have bus B. Now both of them are traveling on opposite what? On opposite direction. Now they all started at what? At 9 what? 9 a.m. So bus A traveled to an extent that he got to this point, and he traveled this direction at a speed of what? The first bus at a speed of 70 what? 72 km per what? Per hour. And the next bus now traveled and got to this extent at what? At what rate? 48 km per what? Hour. Now when they got here, the question told us now that the two buses were what? 240 what? Kilometer what? kilometers apart. Now note that these buses are traveling at a given speed, which is what? Which is unknown. The distance traveled by these two buses, this is dA, let's take it as dA, and the distance traveled by these buses, this other bus, we take it as what? dB, is what? Unknown. But we know their speed and we know the time they departed from the station. Now what we need to do is to first calculate the distance that A traveled from the bus station and the distance that bus B traveled from the what? From the bus station. Now let's do that and let's see where we'll arrive at. Remember the question. The question say, at what time will they be? At what time will they be 240 kilometers apart? That is time. T is what we are looking for. Now we know that the speed is equal to what? The distance over what? Time. Now we want to calculate the distance for dA. Now the distance traveled by D is equal to what? The speed times the what? Times the time. The speed for bus 1 is what? 72 times what? Times T. And so our dA will be equal to what? Our dA will be equal to what? 72 what? T. Now we want to look at the distance traveled by bus B is equal to the speed times the what? Times the time. And the speed is what? 48 times what? Times T. So that means the distance traveled by B will be what? 48 what? 48 T. Now, having gotten the distance traveled by the two cars, now we want to look at the difference between the distance. Now, this distance plus this distance will give us 240 kilometers apart. So that means distance traveled by dA plus what? Distance traveled by dB should be equal to what? Should be equal to 200 and what? 240 what? Kilometer. Now if we look at that distance, remember we can be able to, if we do that, we can be able to find the value for the time. Now having gotten that, we can now say that our 72T plus what? Our 48T is equal to what? 200 and what? 40. Now this plus this will give you 8 plus 2 is 10. You write 0, you carry 1. 7 plus this will give us what? 7 times plus this will give us 11 plus 1, 12. That is 120 what? T equal to what? 200 and what? 240. So our T now, our time for that travel apart will be equal to 240 divided by 120. If this cut this here 1 and this will give for them to travel, the time to travel at that 240 kilometers apart is what? Is 2 hours. Now if you take these two cars, 2 hours to travel that total kilometer apart, now we can now come to a conclusion now that if they left the park by 9:00 a.m. the time that it will take them to be 240 kilometers apart will now be this time plus what? Plus 2 hours, which will be equal to what? 11 what? 11 what? PM. Now if you see the options, you don't have 11 a.m. so I assume that the 11 they are talking about should be 11 p.m. So the time that both of them will be what? 240 kilometers apart will be what? Will be at 11 p.m. It's a logical question indeed that requires you drawing, and once you can draw, you'll be able to understand the question and then you can be able to solve the question. Now let's quickly look at question number 18. Question number 18 says a solid cubed has length 7 cm, width 5 cm and height 4 cm. Calculate each total surface area. The total surface area of a cubed. Now let's look at the drawing of a cubed. Now when we have a cubed is more like close to what? A rectangle, which has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sides. Here is the length, this is the height, and this is the what? The width. Now if we check each of these sides, you come to see a significant thing, that if you look at each of these sides, we are asked to calculate the total surface area. Each of these, the cubed have 6 surfaces, so we are going to look at this surface being the same, this upper surface being the same, and the side surface being the same. So the total surface area of a cubed, the total surface area will be equal to 2 into bracket. Now let's look at the length times the width of up and the down. That makes it 2. That is the length times the what? Times the width, plus 2 times, now we are looking at this side, it will be the height times the what? The width. The height times the width. Now plus 2 times, this time around we are going to look at this other side, which is there. We've taken the length times the width, we've taken the height times the width, and this time around we are going to take this side, which is more like the length times the what? Times the height. Now remember, we were told that the length is equal to what? 7 centimeter. We are told that the width is equal to what? 5 centimeter, and we are told that the height is equal to what? 4 centimeter. Now let's substitute this into this equation we have been given. That will now give us 2 into bracket. The length is what? 7 times what? Times the width, which is 5, right? And here we have the height times the what? Times the width, plus what? 2 into bracket. The height is what? 4 times the width, which is 5. Now plus 2 times the length times the what? Times the height. That is what? 7 times what? 7 times 4. All in what? All in centimeter. Now we are going to look at this all in centimeter square, because this times this is centimeter. Now let's look at how we can simplify that full equation to get our final result. Now 2 times this will give us 2 into bracket. This will give us 35 plus 2 times what? This times this will give us 20 centimeter square, and this will be centimeter square, plus what? 2 times bracket. 7 times 4 will give us 28, all in what? Centimeter square. Now we have to add this, all of these together. This times this will give us 70 centimeter square, plus what? 40 centimeter square, plus what? 28. That will give you 6. 28, 8 times 2 will give you 16. That will give you 56 what? Centimeter what? Square. Now if you add all these centimeter square, 70 plus 40 will give us 110 centimeter square, plus what? 56 what? Centimeter what? Square. Now this plus this will give us what? That will give us equal to what? 166 what? Centimeter what? Square. So the total surface area of the cubed, which we have drawn here, is equal to 166 centimeters square. Remember, when you're giving this question, you just have a few minutes to solve it, so as to go to the next question, and your result will be 166. Check the option, it will be found there. Now let's look at question number 9. Now question number 19 says find the equation of a line parallel to 2y equal to 3x minus 2 and passes through the point 2, 3. Now I want you to note three things before we solve this. That the equation of any straight line is what? Is y equal to what? Mx plus what? C, where m is the constant, where m is the gradient and c is a constant. That's the equation of any line that passes through any point. The equation of a straight line is y equal to mx plus c. Now I want you to also note this. When this line passes through a point, x comma y and what? And gradient m, the equation of that line will be what? Y minus what? y1 equal to what? M into bracket x minus what? X what? 1. And that is the point. Now I also want you to note that if you have two lines that are parallel to each other and they passes through a point, then those two lines will have the same gradient. Now let's apply that to this equation. If you are asked to find the equation of a line that is parallel to this line and passes through the point 2, 3. Now we are given the first equation. The line is what? 2, what? The point is 2, 3, which represents what? Our x1 and our y what? Our y1. Now the first line, the equation of a line that is parallel to the equation of the other line is this. So simply getting the gradient of this will give us the gradient of the other line. So if we say 2y is equal to what? 3x minus what? 2. Then our y here will be equal to what? 3x over 2 minus what? 2 over what? 2. So our y now will be equal to 3 over 2x minus what? 1. If we compare this equation now to what? Y equal to nx plus c, you come to see now that our gradient m is equal to what? 3 over what? 2. So if the gradient of this equation is still the same, this equation is parallel to the equation we are about to look for, the equation of the line, they are parallel. That means they will have the same what? The same gradient. Now having done that, we are going to apply that into this equation. Remember, they say you should find the equation of the line that is parallel to this line. So we have our what? We have our gradient m to be equal to 3 over what? 2, and the point through which these two lines passes is 2, what? 2, 3. Now applying this formula, we'll have our y minus y1 equal to what? M into bracket x minus what? x1. Now let's apply that properly into this equation. If we apply that properly into this equation, we'll have our y minus x is what? Y is what? 3 equal to what? Gradient is 3 over 2 into bracket what? X minus what? Minus 2. I haven't gotten to this point. We will now have to multiply both sides by what? Multiply both sides by 2 to clear this fraction. So that will give me 2 into bracket y minus 3 equal to what? 3 over 2 into bracket x minus 2 times what? Times 2. This will cut this, and then we'll have our 2y minus 6 to be equal to what? 3x minus what? 6. So our 2y will be equal to what? This will go here to give us what? 3x minus what? 6 plus what? 6 plus what? 6. So this will cut this. Our 2y will be equal to what? 3 what? X. So if we simplify further, we are going to have our y to be equal to what? 3x over what? Over 2. So that is exactly what the equation of that line parallel to the other line will be like. that this will be the equation of the line. Y is equal to 3x over 2. Now let's look at the final question for today, question number 20. To the final question for today's video, and the question says a man is 5 times as old as his son. In 4 years time the product of their ages will be 340. If the son's age is y, express the product of their ages in terms of what? Y. Now we will start with the son's age. Age of the son is equal to what? Y. And the age of the man, they say, is equal to what? 5 times the age of his sons. That is 5 times what? Times y. Now in 4 years time they told us that the product of their age will give us this. So in 4 years time, the son will be equal to 4 plus what? Plus y age, and the man will be equal to what? 4 plus what? 5 what? 5y age. Now the product, they say we should express the product of their ages in terms of what? Y. Now having gotten these two things, let's look at the product of their ages. Now we have 2 of their ages equal to 340. That the product of their ages in 4 years time, the product of their ages will be equal to 340. So the product of these their ages will now be equal to what? 4 plus what? Y multiplied by what? 4 plus what? 5y. Both of them will be equal to 340. Now let's express the product of their ages in what? In y. So we'll have our what? 4 plus y multiplied by what? 4 plus 5y. Both of them is equal to 340. So this times this will give us what? This times this will give us what? 16. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 5 will give us plus what? 20 what? Y. Y times 4 will give us plus what? 4y. And y times 5y will give us what? Plus what? 5y what? Square. Everything will be equal to what? 340. Now if we add this together, we'll have our what? 5y square. This plus this will give us plus what? 24y plus what? 16 equal to what? 340. Now let's simplify further to make this expression equal to y, all in y. Square is equal to plus what? 24 what? Y. Now plus what? 16 minus 340 equal to what? 0. Now our 5y square plus what? Plus 24y. 16 minus 340 will give us what? Minus 320 what? 4 equal to what? 0. So the product of their age expressed in an equation in y is what? 5y squared plus 24y minus 224. You see how easy it is to solve questions like this when you are asked to solve questions like this. So this is the last question we'll be taking on this series of this video of questions, your West Africa Examination Council 2020 past question number 11 to 20. In the next edition of this video series, we are going to look at the next questions from 21 to 30. Have you subscribed? If you have not, please hit the subscription button so that you can be the first to get that question as you prep, as that video as you prepare for your exam. I thank you so much for paying attention to each and every solution of these questions in this series, and I know you really understand them. I look forward to seeing you watch our next video, and I say thanks for watching.